welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast for Monday, April the 28th. I'm Zach Ewing, along with Koki Riley, who is, as always, the Advocate's LSU baseball beat writer, and we have some baseball to talk about. What a series that was this weekend.
A lot of stuff happened. We got blowouts, we got low-scoring games, high-scoring game. It was a little bit of everything this weekend. A walk-off.
Let's do that baseball, baby. It was we had a huge long rain delay. Like I think we played SEC baseball bingo this weekend, and we had a blackout. So LSU takes 2 out of 3 from Tennessee. 2 blowouts. Each team had one. Although you could argue the Saturday game, Tennessee, it got away late from LSU. But the series was really decided Friday night, this epic comeback. We're going to dig into that. We're going to talk about all of that. But I want to start big picture. LSU takes 2 out of 3 from Tennessee. And we talked last week, Koki, I think we called it an LSU slump. You could probably pick nits with that term. I don't know. But from my perspective, I'm thinking LSU was 30-3, and then they went 5-5 over the next 10 games. That was actually even before they lost 13-3, by the way, to Northwestern State.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that LSU was slumping compared to the level that they were at a month ago. So to have a fellow top 10 team in a showdown of the last 2 national champions, Tennessee in 2024, LSU obviously in 23, and 2 teams that have both spent time at number 1 this year, to take 2 out of 3 in that series is a big deal to me.
Yeah, it's absolutely a big deal, and it kind of is the difference between being like firmly in the top 8 and being that top 8 national seed that you want to be if you're LSU, and to host that super regional at the box. It's the difference between that and kind of being on the borderline or being on the outside looking in, which is kind of where Tennessee is at the moment. If you just look at the polls, you don't even look at the metrics. Like if you look at the polls, like LSU is the number 2 team in a couple different polls, and Tennessee is bottom half of the top 10 or outside the top 10 overall. So it's amazing what one inning in a Friday game can do to sort of change the fate of these 2 teams at the moment. And we can maybe briefly touch on the Tennessee side of things, just to talk about how thin the margins are, across the SEC. If you're not Texas,
yeah, who apparently lives on the margins and thrives on the margins.
Yeah, they always win on the margins. I think they won 3 games by 1 run this weekend or something like that.
Texas A&M, LSU's next opponent, just has to be feeling terrible after that weekend. But anyway, good.
Yeah,
continue.
Yeah, especially at the rivalry weekend, all the context of that too. But yeah, for LSU, just absolutely. I don't want to say it was a must win for them to be a top 8 seed to win this series, but it definitely helps them a ton. And sends a larger statement across the country that heck, this team can win big series against great teams like a team like Tennessee. And despite the fact that Tennessee was the better team through the first 18 innings of the series, I think it's safe to say that because of how
at least 17 of the first 18 innings.
17 of the first 18 innings. There was one inning where LSU absolutely dominated, but then the other innings, Tennessee not only led, but they were also just dominating.
They were in control.
Mound.
They were in control.
In control. Yeah.
But and to your point, I think LSU came in at number 6 and Tennessee was number 7, or do I have that backward? They were 6 and 7 in one order or the other.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
The point is, whoever won this series was going to feel like they were solidly in that top 8 and super regional host territory, and whoever lost was going to be more borderline or even possibly on the outside looking in. There's still season left. Tennessee can still get back into that top 8, but we're looking at a situation now where they may have to go on the road in the super regionals. And by the way, you don't really want to be down at the bottom of the top 8 either, because if you're 7 or 8 and Tennessee's 9 or 10, guess what? You may have a rematch of this series to make it to Omaha, which I don't think anyone would love from an LSU perspective if they were down there. So you really want to be in that top 5. But even more than that, Koki, this was a statement. This was a series that was circled on calendars. Everybody saw it. You have Tennessee, this defending national champions. They're brash. Nobody likes them. They have Tony Vitello, who's this, kind of young, loudmouth coach. He's not that young anymore, but he's like this loudmouth, brash, aggressive coach, and you either love him or hate him. And if you're not wearing orange, you probably hate him.
Yeah.
And he brings his team in here, and LSU's more of the old guard of college baseball. Obviously, won the championship 2 years ago, but man, you just want to win this series so bad. Like, despite all the seeding repercussions and things like that, like sometimes you just want to go beat the guy in the other dugout, and that's what this was.
And I mean, like this weekend got a little bit testy. Like, this isn't just a made up thing between two fan bases or this like AI generated rivalry, right? Like, this is not this is not like cooked up in a lab or like something that people are trying to make a thing that's not a thing, you know? Like Ariel Antigua, who's the shortstop for Tennessee, and Jared Jones were exchanging some pleasantries, let's just say, throughout the entire weekend. And there was definitely an intensity to this series, and these two teams have created a little bit of a rivalry in recent years because of how good they are. Not just because of how good they are, but also and being in the same conference, obviously, but also just like the two different styles of the way they go about their business, right? So what you said with Tony Vitello, with his brashness, he's loud, he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. Jay Johnson and LSU is just a lot more calculated. They're just a lot more go about your business and do your thing. And then both teams have players that aren't afraid to jaw at each other a little bit, right? You look at a guy like Jared Jones, like he's had a bit of a history of this now, where he's not afraid to say some words to opposing players, umpires, even this weekend. Well, he was in the right to do that, but we'll get into that later. And yeah, like, I mean, he plays the game with an edge and plays the game with a real swagger. And I think both these teams have kind of found themselves consistently in this collision course. And when you're sort of building up that history, these are two programs, at least at the moment, that are kind of running hot right now. And 1 year LSU has Tennessee's number, the next year Tennessee has LSU's number, and this year it was just a lot more even between the two sides. So it's fascinating to watch.
I know there's 16 teams in the SEC, and I know you only play 10 baseball series. Please don't take them off the schedule. It's too much fun. Yeah. Let's go to Knoxville next year. Have them come back to Baton Rouge the year after. Like, it's too much fun. Come on. We'll go through game by game here because I think it's worth doing in such a big series. Obviously, the game of the weekend was Friday. Now, it started out with this great atmosphere at the box. 3-hour rain delays and 6 innings of being no hit will put a damper on said atmosphere. It was still a good atmosphere, and when 1 o'clock in the morning rolled around and the 9th inning rolled around, a lot of people had left, and a lot of people at home had gone to bed, hand up. I went to bed after the 8th inning. I had done NFL draft coverage all night. I was tired, and I watched LSU get the leadoff man on in the 8th and kind of squander that opportunity, and it's 2-0, and I thought, you know what? I'm falling asleep on my couch. I need to go to bed, and I got up and turned the game off and woke up the next morning to a very big surprise that LSU had won the game 6-3. So, first of all, it felt like a postseason game, Koki. The atmosphere, again, the rain delay changed that, but the atmosphere was postseason-esque. The pitching was certainly postseason worthy. And even the fact that, like, every time Tennessee scored a run, it felt like Omaha in that you score a run in the 6th inning and you're like, God, that could be the run that wins the game. I mean, it feels like a 3-run homer every time you just score one.
Yeah. And that's what happens when you got 2 top 15 picks on the mound at the same time. And we saw this a little bit in that Oklahoma series, but Anderson really just became the storyline, right? Because he threw the complete game shutout. Yeah. But in this game, you with the amount of talent that's on both sides of the ball offensively as well, that's what really makes it feel like we are in Omaha sacred postseason ground right now, with these two aces on the mound, to put it plainly. And 1 run felt like 3 in a game like this, and like when Tennessee was up 3-0 and LSU had not only scored 0 runs but just didn't have a lot of opportunities throughout the game. Like there was really only a couple innings where they had a runner in scoring position at all, and I think that's why a lot of people left after like the 8th inning, because it's 1 a.m. They're down 3-0. Like it feels like it's over, right?
Yeah.
And then
Tennessee left the door open just a crack.
Yes,
Just a crack.
just a crack. And that's what errors do. They leave they leave that door open. And Dean Curley, who has struggled defensively at third base, really for this entire season. I mean, I still think there's a decent chance he becomes a first round pick, but at the same time, Ethan Fry hits a ground ball to him over at third base. He makes an error. Another ground ball gets hit over third base. He makes another error, and all of a sudden you got two guys on with nobody out. And then I want to say Tanner Reeves walks to load the bases.
And I
Yep.
think
That's big.
yeah, it's just getting runners on is important in that situation, obviously, but the vibes shift.
Yes.
And everybody in the stadium, players included, and there were, I would still say, 4,000 or 5,000 people left in the stadium.
Yeah,
Not that
it's
many.
hard to
Yeah, I mean,
say.
it was
Yeah.
half full-ish, maybe a little less than half full. It's hard to tell. I was on TV. You were there. Everybody perks up and goes, holy cow, wait a minute, it's only a 3-run game. The tying run's on base. The tying run's at the plate.
Yeah,
And things
Liam
change.
Doyle isn't on the plate.
Yeah,
He wasn't
Liam Doyle and his
on the
ghost
mound. Yeah.
fastball.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Kodai Senga has the ghost forkball. Liam Doyle has the ghost fastball. It just makes these pitches sound so much more like mysterious and intimidating. I'm going to need a ghost curveball and a ghost slider and a ghost changeup to pop up in the next few years. But anyway, ninth inning, LSU loads the bases, and I would say it's hard to say which was the biggest hit of the night, but certainly the biggest pinch hit of the night was next.
And Dalton Beck comes up to the plate. He's a left-handed hitter, which I think is a very key distinction here because Jay Johnson said this afterwards as well, where the lefties were just seeing Snead a lot better than the righties were. And that just makes sense because, Snead's got like a 96, 97 mile per hour sinking fastball to go along with a slider along with a great slider that, moves away from right-handed batters. And it's just a really, really tough look for a righty on righty matchup. But the lefties can see that slider a lot easier. They can sort of plan for that pitch to go along with the fastball. And, and Snead apparently has run into some trouble once trouble starts a brewing, right? Where, guys get on base and the results aren't necessarily the same. And you definitely saw that in this scenario where, he walks Tanner Reeves, who's a lefty, up, that's another guy who can see the ball a little bit better. So you had that data point to go along with the two errors. Then again, all of a sudden, the bases are loaded, and there was one out actually at the time when Beck comes up to the plate, and Beck, this is like his 7th or 8th at bat this season. A two-way guy who just hasn't played that much on either side of the ball.
Yeah, pretty amazing circumstance.
Exactly.
Actually.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it. And it rips a second hit of the year, 107 mile per hour single up the middle. Just really wild stuff.
Of
honestly.
his 2 hits, which one would you say was the more memorable?
I think this one because I've been at every game and I don't remember the first one. So
he probably does, and his family might, but that might be the only people who remember the first one.
Yeah,
a lot of people can remember this one. So it's 3-2. Chris Stanfield flies out, does not move the runners. So now there's 2 outs, and it looks like Tennessee might get out of this after all. But LSU then has the exact guy coming to the plate that you would choose in this situation, and that is Derek Curiel.
Yeah. Again, another lefty, but more importantly, your leadoff guy, a guy who can work it at bat, who can put the ball in play. In terms of reliability, he's top of the depth chart, and there's a reason why he's led off almost every game for the past 2 months now, or something close to that. So I mean, who else would you want in that situation? He falls behind the count 0-2, but this is a guy who's very comfortable in those 0-2 counts because of how well he sees the ball out of the hand and how comfortable he is with, hitting 2-strike pitches. And I think he worked another ball, and then he gets a pitch to hit and shoots a single past Andrew Fisher, the first baseman, and would have been a really, really tough play for the first baseman, like a really good defensive first baseman, maybe probably more at like the major league level might have made that play, but it was an earned hit.
It was ripped.
It was an earned hit, and I scores the run, and now we've got a tie ball game.
Now we have a tie ball game, and up comes Bear Jones, who we say that about Curiel, and we're going to talk more about Derek Curiel because he had an amazing weekend.
Yeah.
But I would have to say Jared Jones was not the guy most LSU fans would want up in that situation. I mean, he, quite frankly, has struggled in SEC play. He has not been what you expected him to be. He has not come through in a lot of big moments. But he reminded us all at once what the reason he's batting high in this lineup for and what he is capable of.
Yeah, exactly. And gets a fastball in the outer half and just goes to Powtown on it. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, it was a 452-foot bomb at 111 miles an hour off the bat. Over the batter's eye.
111 miles an hour.
Yeah, 111 miles an hour. He actually hit a ball harder on Sunday, believe it or not. 115.
And so I love this. He sat there and admired his homer. Which,
yes.
And the umpire, and I understand why the umpires in college baseball are trained to do this, to not let hitters do that because it causes fights, because you're standing right in front of the catcher and the pitcher and you're sitting there and it looks like it is showboating, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But, showboating is not always the worst thing in the world. We don't have to treat it like it's this awful thing. You did something good. You get to celebrate. But the umpires are trained to keep them moving. I get that. In this situation, you need a little contextual awareness as an umpire. And Jared Jones was interviewed on SEC Network yesterday, and I loved his interview about it because they asked him about that moment where the umpire's trying to get him to move along, and he's like, "Dude, the game's over. There's nothing you need to worry about. The catcher's already walking off that way. He knows there's not going to be a fight. These guys aren't here. I'm celebrating." So he didn't say all that. He just said, "The game's over, dude."
Yeah, the game was over, and these umpires were. They were kind of given a tough task this weekend because of the tensions between these two teams for all the reasons I said earlier in the pod.
And overall, I thought they did a pretty good job.
The strike zone was fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. We've definitely seen worse.
Strike
this
zones
season.
are never great in college baseball. Let's be honest.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. But there was a couple of moments where they kind of became the no fun police because Jake Brown on Sunday hit a home run and he flipped the bat a mile up in the air. But let the guy celebrate a little bit. He hit homered.
That is the modern era of baseball.
Yeah, we need to have more swag in baseball. We need to promote it more. If you get your feelings hurt, then don't give up the home run.
And Tennessee does that stuff too.
Yeah, everyone does that stuff.
And so if you are gonna do it, you have to be able to take it also. That goes for LSU also. And everybody's I understand what the umpires are doing, and they've been trained to do that. And so I'm not really blaming them. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. I also admired the Tennessee center fielder for hustling after that ball, even though he had absolutely no. Because you always watch the outfilders, right? And you're like, oh, wait, is this going to get out? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's getting. Why is he even back there? That ball is 50 feet over his head, at least.
Exactly. And he took his time and admired it. Said a couple pleasantries to Ariel Antigua, who's the Tennessee shortstop, while he was rounding second base, and that became a storyline later on in the series too. Again, kind of going back to the theme I talked about earlier, where these two teams don't like each other that much, and it creates for a more fun baseball and creates for more of that rivalry feel, as I was saying earlier. So it was there's a decent chance that swing and that inning decides that is the difference between them being a super regional host and just a regional host. It was that big of an inning.
And
for them.
It's interesting, from a Tennessee perspective, I think you look at this and you say, look, we made a couple of errors in the ninth inning. If we don't do that, we kind of gave it away. If we don't do that, we won this series, and that's a huge road series win. And everything's fine, right? We'll be fine. We'll get him again. We'll see him in Hoover, or we'll see him in the postseason. But I also think you give a lot of credit to LSU. What do good teams do when you leave the door open a crack? They take advantage of it, and the door was open a crack, and they burst through it like the freaking Kool-Aid man. All right? It was not just taking advantage of it. It was 6 runs in the ninth inning.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Kool-Aid man's here. That's what good teams do in big moments.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have said it any better with the Kool-Aid man, and all
Did
that
you
sort
want to
of
try?
stuff.
Did you want to try your
No,
Kool-Aid?
I really don't
Okay.
want to try.
I'll do it for the
wanna-
both of us.
I don't want to ruin the moment because I feel like that's like the best impression we could possibly have done right there. But no, you're absolutely right, and they didn't leave themselves much room for error heading into this weekend, or really heading into the last few weeks where their schedule gets really tough because they've lost 2 of their last 3 series. Both those series they lost were at home, and the last one was to a Kentucky team that is definitely playing much better baseball lately. I think they're around 500 in conference play now, but at the same time, like, if you're playing Kentucky at home, you got to win the series. And they didn't do that last weekend. And that really shrinks the margin for error for them heading into a weekend like this. And then when you have one bad inning, all of a sudden you lost your 3rd series in 4 weeks. And you may be on the outside looking in the super regional picture at the moment. Granted, there's teams that they can play where they can get back into it very easily. But at the end of this regular season, or really at the end of the year, and they lose in the super regional on the road somewhere, or whatnot. Like if they end up being in that sort of spot, they can look back at that game being like, we could have put ourselves in a much better situation if we either win one of those Kentucky games or play a clean 9th inning against LSU.
Yeah, it's not panic time for Tennessee, but they got work to do for sure.
Yeah.
We need to take a break, but before we do, one more question. Should the thumbnail for this episode be Jared Jones' face photoshopped onto the Kool-Aid Man?
I can't see why not.
Producer Alex likes it.
It's our podcast. We can do what we want.
I think we got to
right?
do it, and it's going to make people click on the video. So if you clicked on this video because of the Kool-Aid Man, congratulations, you have now found out why. And with that said, let's take a 30-second break, and we're going to break down the other 2 games of this very good series right after this.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. With quick picks, you can tap right into pre-built, ready-to-bet parlays right from the home screen. And if you miss tip-off, no worries. You can play same-game parlays live during the action. Plus, it's never been easier to find and bet on the biggest matchups of the day, so you can keep up with all the action. Caesars Sportsbook, proud partner of the NBA and the only sportsbook app with Caesars Rewards. Download it today.
Welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Zach Ewing with Koki Riley, and we are breaking down LSU's series win over Tennessee. It's been a lot of fun. We're going to break down the last 2 games. Subscribe to our LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. You get all of our videos. We're going to have not only podcasts every week, but also take some videos from LSU baseball's postseason run. Hopefully, fingers crossed, all the way to Omaha. Also, when football starts up again with media days and fall camp, and I hate the word fall camp, but it's not
fall. It's
like July
August.
30th. It's freaking hot. It's not fall camp.
If you're out there, it does not feel like fall.
But anyway, we'll have videos from it, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, just so subscribe to the channel, sign up for notifications. That way you will get a notification every time we have a new video. And it's the best LSU coverage you can find anywhere. We're going to continue breaking down this series with Saturday's game. This was the game Tennessee won, and it ended up being a Tennessee blowout-ish, but for the first 7 innings, it was almost the same game as Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, 2-0, 3-0 game through 7 innings, really, and then in the bottom through 6 innings, I should say, because in the bottom of the 7th, LSU tacks on 2 runs. A pair of solo home runs against Marcus Phillips, who was the Tennessee starter, who was lights out, just as dominant as Liam Doyle was to start the game, and then kind of lost some of his velocity in that 7th inning, and LSU was able to pounce on it with a couple of home runs.
First homer of the year?
It was Michael Braswell, not Stanfield. It was Milam homers, and then I think on the very next pitch, if I'm remembering correctly, Michael Braswell hits his first homer of the year.
Yep.
It was a pretty interesting weekend for Braswell because he had 2 hits and both of them were home runs, and he also hadn't homered for the first 43 games until these 2 home runs. So interesting week for him. But anyway, he homers, and then it's a 3-2 game, and you're thinking, okay, now LSU can turn to a guy like Zach Cowan or Kason Evans in a 1-run game in the 8th inning where you have a real shot of winning this game and winning this series before you even get to Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting too because Jay Johnson on Friday night in a similar situation elected to go to Zach Cowan out of the bullpen, even though LSU was trailing. I don't have the number in front of me of the number of times Cowan's come into a game with the Tigers trailing, but it can't be. Like, I can count the number on one hand. I think
Less than it might be once, maybe.
Yeah,
They did it with Evans once. I know that.
It doesn't happen very often because these guys are your firemen. You put them in there to put out fires to get you to the finish line to win games. So the fact that he put him in there to keep it close Friday night and then had the opportunity to do the same thing Saturday but elected not to. Part of that may have been they already had one win in their pocket and he saw the opportunity to, hey, we have a better chance to win Sunday if I save these guys. And we win the series then. And you know, not that you're going to punt Saturday's game, but you're obviously are lessening your chances of winning it doing that. So I think that's probably the thought process. But it's just interesting to compare Friday to Saturday with that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that situation, in that moment, I would have put Evans in the game if I were Jay Johnson, but he didn't, and ended up being the right decision because Casey Evans gives up 2 earned runs in 6 innings in his first career start against that lineup, which is just absurd for a freshman, especially.
Yeah, so let's skip ahead to that. I mean, so long story short, on Saturday, the bullpen arms that Jay Johnson did go to let the game get out of hand.
Yes.
So it backfired in that respect.
And there was an error that wasn't called an error in there too. So that had a big play to do with it.
It's never one guy. But it got out of hand. Tennessee won.
Ugly pitching either way.
Then you go into Sunday though with Casey Evans and Zach Cowan, the law firm of Cowan and Evans, as I like to say. Like they're ready to go, and the way that they've been going 4 or 5 innings each. Like that's your pitching plan for Sunday, and it worked out really well, as you say.
Yeah, Evans gives up 2 runs in the first inning. So at first you're like, oh boy, is this Evans as a star thing not going to work? And then he throws 5 shutout innings.
It is a routine thing, right? Like you're in the bullpen longer. You have to wait. Like it's a totally different way that you would get ready for the game.
And part of it was execution because like Evans said afterwards that he was leaving the ball high too much and Tennessee was taking advantage of it. But once he started locating the ball better lower in the zone, particularly with that changeup, or that splinge, the half splitter, half changeup that he's got.
Can we call that a ghost splinge?
A ghost splinge. It was a ghost splinge in the the last
work,
5 innings of this game. But I mean, he only 2 hitters reached base after that first inning. Like he was dominant from that point on, and with the way the offense was rolling, that was more than enough for them to win this game. So. Yeah, I mean, he was fantastic. It really begs the question of whether whether he's just the Sunday guy moving forward. We get to that right now.
Yeah, that's the question as we go kind of into the latter part of the schedule here. Series left at Texas A&M, home against Arkansas, obviously a very good hitting team, and then at South Carolina to end the season. And into the postseason, the pros and cons are pretty obvious here. You love to have a Sunday guy that you can trust. But if you use him in that role, you do not have Casey Evans to be your lockdown reliever on Friday and Saturday. So there's a balancing act there.
Yes. And Jay Johnson said after Sunday's game that he would have thrown Evans on Saturday if the game was tied or they got ahead, which I thought was pretty instructive for what this Sunday thing could look like moving forward, because if they're in a 1-run game on Saturday against A&M and say they won the first game of the series, or maybe not, maybe they don't even need to win the first game of the series, but if they're in a 1-run game against A&M on Saturday, and it's the 8th inning, and they're in this situation, the same situation that they were in this past weekend, but they're ahead or tied instead of behind, I think Evans comes into the game, and they're going to have to figure out something for Sunday. I just feel like it's going to kind of come down to situational baseball and what happens earlier in the week to see what you're going to get on Sunday in terms of a starter. But the fact that Evans can do this is very instructive once we get to a regional or even a super regional where you're going to need a third guy to go 5 or 6 innings, or a fourth guy to go 5 or 6 innings. And now you've seen Casey Evans can go 85 pitches, give up 2 earned runs in 6 innings against against an Omaha caliber team. Like that should make you feel good if you're an LSU fan for sure.
It's really interesting because I think the answer is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jay Johnson is like famously reclusive about his pitching plans. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't like to tell anybody.
I asked him the same that question on Saturday night after that game, being like, "Why didn't you throw Evans?" Or basically like, "Why didn't you throw Evans or Cowan when it was a 1-run game in the 8th inning?" And he basically said, "I'm not gonna
not telling you that.
I'm not telling you that."
Yeah, reclusive is the wrong word, but reticent. Like he won't because of competitive reasons.
Yeah.
Whether
That's debatable whether
we could argue whether
Yeah.
announcing it makes any difference in
any
the
real
world at all.
difference.
But
Yeah. And he kind of acknowledged that. Like he joked yesterday on Sunday, like he's so good, and he was like, Evans is so good, it might not even mattered.
He's the coach, it's his decision. I
Yeah.
don't necessarily agree with that it's really a big competitive advantage, but whatever floats your boat, whatever blows your hair back, as they say.
Yeah.
I think the point is this. Jay Johnson is going to do what it takes to win these series. That's what we saw. I think the fact that they had won Friday made a huge difference. I think if they lost Friday, he maybe goes after Saturday's game harder and says, well, whatever's left for Sunday is left for Sunday, but I got to win this game. I think that going forward, you're going to see, as you said, against A&M, if on Friday or Saturday it's a close game and LSU has a lead to protect, you're going to see Zach Cowan, you're going to see Case and Evans. They're going to protect those leads and try to win Friday and Saturday. And if that means you throw Chase Shores back out there on Sunday and
or Connor Ware.
Yeah, or Connor Ware, and they do well or they don't do well and you win or lose. Like at that point, it's the difference between winning a series and a sweep. And if that means you used Cowan and Evans to get to that point, then great, you won your 2 games. But if they've lost one of the first 2 games and it's out of hand or out of reach, and you feel like you can save them for Sunday,
or you're
and
up
really
by
go
7 runs on Saturday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can go hard after Sunday's game, then you do that. And it's more of a postseason style of coaching now that we're getting late in the season, because that's what you'll see in the regional. If they're playing the 4 seed in the regional and it's a team that they should score 10, 12 runs against, you're probably not going to see Cowan and Evans. But if it's an elimination game, you're going to see them, or you may even see them start. Like, that's what he's doing. It's going to be totally played by ear, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think that answer that he gave yesterday again, where he's like, we would have thrown Evans on Saturday if we were tied or ahead, is kind of not everything you need to know, but it's very instructive as to what the pitching plan is going to look like on Sundays. And we can get into Chase Shores briefly because he didn't pitch well on Saturday. Like, I don't really see a path to where he's like throwing 5 innings on a Sunday anytime soon, just because of the performances, 1. And 2, Connor Ware was fine when they started him last week against Alabama. It was only 2 innings, but it was something. So, that's something to keep in mind as well when we're talking about the Sunday pitching plan, because, I think everyone sees yesterday's game, and they're like, all right, they found their Sunday starter now, lock it in. And I don't think it's that simple.
No, I don't think so. And I don't think it should be. I think it's similar to where you see managers in Major League Baseball shifting away from this is our 7th inning guy, this is our 8th inning guy, this is our 9th inning guy. They'll shift it to where, well, let's throw our best guy against the best part of the opposing team's lineup, or our best lefty against the pocket of the lineup that has the tough lefties. Either way, like, you're not seeing those defined roles. You're going to see some, like, Kate Anderson's going to start the first game. Until we maybe get to the regional, we'll talk about that. But, like, he's going to start the Friday night game, and Anthony Ionson's going to start the second game of the series. And then after that, I think the point is that outside of those 2 guys, Jay Johnson only has 2 guys that he trusts fully and completely, and that's Cowan and Evans. After that, it's going to be mix and match.
Jay, to tell you how much he trusts Cowan and Evans, Jay, during his radio show, his radio appearance after Sunday's game, said, like, outside of his wife, Cowan and Evans are the 2 most important people in his life. So that tells you how much trust he has in those guys. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
Did you feel left out of that conversation? You spent as much time with him as anybody, Koki.
I don't think I'm even in the top 10, Zach, if I'm being honest.
Well, you got to get through his roster first, probably.
I got to get through all the roster, the entire roster, any other family and friends he has, and the coaching staff as well. So,
but you only talk baseball with him, which has to put you high in his book.
That's true, though. Yeah, that is very true.
It has to, because that's what
a lot
Jay
of
loves.
those other people do talk baseball, a lot of baseball with him too.
That's right.
To be fair. So yeah.
Okay. Before we go, I did want to circle back and talk just a little bit more about Derek Curiel, because this is just incredible as a freshman, right? Like, I think of the guy, and I don't mean to, make this flip, but he feels so automatic, and you have to stop and remind yourself every week that he's still only a freshman. Saturday was the first time in 44 games that he did not get on base this year.
Yeah, it's game 44. He didn't get on base. He had gotten on base in the first 43. Yeah.
So he went 0 for 4. He did not get on base on Saturday, and that was the first time. And so how does he respond to that? Oh, he just turns around and goes 4 for 4 on Sunday and is the player of the game again. And I think is a clear front runner to be National Freshman of the Year, maybe even into All-American conversations. Like, what a season this guy's had. We knew he was good coming in, but he's been unbelievable.
Absolutely. And I don't know, it's hard to say much else about him because he kind of just does a little bit of everything from an offensive perspective. As you know, showed a little bit of power, obviously, with the home run on Sunday. He was absolutely fantastic in terms of just he always gets on base. He works counts beautifully. He sees spin better than everyone else on the team. Yeah. And it's amazing how little the stage or the speed of the game really affects him at all.
And how good he could be. This is what he's doing as a freshman. How good could he be? You mentioned the thing of him falling behind 0-2. He kind of has, not comparing him to Juan Soto, but he has this Juan Soto ability just in this one specific where he'll take a pitch that seems like it's a really good pitch to hit, and you're going, what are you doing? You got to swing that.
He's very patient.
But he knows what he's doing, and he's looking for something specific early in the counts. And if it's not there, you said it earlier, he is totally comfortable batting with 2 strikes to the point where he's
almost too comfortable.
He's almost better batting with 2 strikes. Like, he's so good.
Yeah, exactly. And they probably only have him for one more year because he's draft eligible as a sophomore, and it's part of the reason that explains why he's so comfortable already is because he's a little bit older as a freshman.
Sure,
but at the same time, like
still his first year facing
exactly. It's still his first year facing this level of playing baseball.
It's crazy.
So it's crazy. Exactly, it is absurd stuff.
So Derek Curiel, good. Kate Anderson, good. Jared Jones, very good.
He had a good weekend. Yeah, like 4 for 12, which is pretty solid.
And LSU as a whole, good weekend. 2 out of 3. They play Southeastern this week. They go to Texas A&M. Interesting series because even though A&M got swept, they're obviously playing better than they were earlier in the season. So that's going to be tough. And then Arkansas coming to the box for the final regular season series the week after that. So we'll follow it. Koki, you got anything else?
No, other than just the offense exploding for 12 runs was very important for this team because, again, like a lot of the struggles that they had during that 5-5 stretch was because they just weren't hitting the ball. Because pitching wise, this team's pretty good. Even though, like, yes, there's like the bullpen depth issues and the strikes issues and stuff like that. But if you look at like ERAs and compare them to the rest of the conference, the rest of the country, they're right up there with some of the better teams. So. It's the hitting, and the offense looked more like the unit that we saw during the first half of the season on Sunday, and that's what they needed to do against a Tennessee team that no longer had their 2 best pitchers, and a Tennessee team that's pitching depth has not been quite as good as maybe the numbers say, just because part of it's like non-conference stuff, and anyway, but like they did a really good job of they made Tennessee sort of turn the wheel of fortune and. Going from pitcher to pitcher to pitcher just to see what would stick. And nothing really stuck for them. And LSU scored 12 runs and won the game in 8 innings.
Yeah, it's a good point because the first 2 games, 18 innings, LSU only scored in 2 of them. Now they got 6 in the one, which the Kool-Aid Man inning. But it was good to see some more consistent at-bats up and down the lineup Sunday for sure. So we'll be back next week with more baseball. Until then, for our producer, Alex Lee, he's Koki Riley. I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching the LSU Sports Insider.